Could the income tax, the IRS, and even the Federal Reserve be completely abolished here in the United States of America? And could it happen quickly? The answer is most definitely yes, because I think we're all learning, hopefully, at least all of my listeners and audience are very well aware that it seems that anything is possible. You know, there was a time not too long ago when I would have said there were certain limits to both good and bad. I want to take you back real quick before we get into this story. I want to take you back to 2020, early 2020, just around the time when the pandemic was ramping up, before lockdowns, before any of that stuff. If you had asked me certain questions, I would have been wrong on all of them. And I take pride in not being wrong very often. But I definitely would have been wrong. If you had asked me, would the American people, especially conservatives, would they be willing to completely give up their freedoms, to stay in lockdown over a disease, regardless of the mortality rate? Would they allow themselves to lose all of their freedoms, essentially? To be told who was essential and who was not? Or would people rise up? And I learned during what was supposed to be a rally that there weren't a whole lot of us out there. Not nearly as many as I would have thought. I attended a rally. I was supposed to be, I didn't quite help organize it, but I was supposed to help promote it. We got the word out. We had RSVPs from thousands of people. Press came out to this rally. We were going to a city hall here in California, and we were going to make our voices heard regarding the lockdowns. And there were more press there than there were patriots. There were more people taking pictures and filming the embarrassment than there were actual people there, actual patriots, ready to fight back, ready to make our voices heard. And that was a shocker to me, because I had participated in such rallies in the past, similar rallies, Tea Party rallies, for example, and they were pretty easy to organize. But once government started cracking down and saying, oh, you're not essential, so you can't be out here. You have to only get one roll of toilet paper per day, and you have to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart and get injected with an experimental mRNA vaccine because, hey, this disease seems to kill the occasional person. I would not have known it or believed that it was possible had I not seen it with my own eyes. I would not have believed that a disease such as COVID would have been able to prompt mass vaccination. I would not have believed that over 80% of the population would get at least one jab for a disease that posed very limited risk to anybody under the age of 50. Almost no risk to children. And yet, it did prompt millions of kids to get injected by their parents and their doctors. I wouldn't have believed it, but I learned very quickly that the fortitude of the American people was not nearly what I thought it would be. Not in a situation like that. Not, especially considering the facts were very, very crystal clear to anybody who would look at them. There was no need for lockdowns. There was no need for face masks. There was no need for injections. And there definitely wasn't a need for social distancing. We've seen examples of other nations, Sweden, for example, that did not participate in the draconian activities that we did. Their end results were far better than ours. Go figure. But again, I would not have expected it, not because of take the science out of the equation, and let's focus on the freedom. I know that when I was growing up, that it couldn't have happened, could not have happened, period. I mean, we weren't perfect by any means. We had our own set of problems, but there's no way that we would have been willing to, at those numbers, I should say. It's not saying nobody would have, but I would say that the injection rate would have been probably closer to 60 or 70%. I would say that there would have been much more defiance to the draconian rules. We've learned that in 2020, that something I thought was fairly impossible was very possible. And it wasn't the fact that the election was stolen that I knew was possible. It was the fact that despite mountains of evidence demonstrating widespread, ubiquitous voter fraud, a massive amount of voter fraud, that the truth could not penetrate the shield of lies that had been placed around it. I could not believe that. I witnessed it. I participated in it. I lost accounts over it. I still, to this day, am pretty sure that I am the first person to ever get banned on Spotify for expressing an opinion that was not illegal, an opinion that was not destructive. It was an opinion regarding the election. Now, granted, I was pretty vocal about it, but I got banned, and I even got a phone call from a phone call that I can't discuss, from somebody who said that they supported what I was doing and that it wasn't a unanimous decision to ban me from not only Spotify, but also Transistor and some other podcasting system. I would not have thought that they could have gotten away with it, but I was wrong. And as it turned out, I'm very glad that I was wrong, because in 2020, had we gotten our way, had my prayers and my actions, my prayers been answered, my actions have been heeded, my words had been heeded, had that been the case, then we would be in trouble. Right now, today, we'd be in big trouble. You know why? Because President Trump, had he been allowed to rightly win the election, then we would have maintained Mike Pence as the vice president. We would have still had Bill Barr as the attorney general. We would have still had people like Christopher Wray running the Federal Bureau of Investigations. We wouldn't have this amazing cabinet that we have today. Nor would President Trump have this massive mandate that he has today. As a matter of fact, today we would probably be faced with President Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or somebody like that. It would have been disastrous. We did not get our way, praise God, that his will was done. President Trump's election victory in 2020 was stolen, and here we are today with this massive, wonderful situation that we're currently in. What about Roe v. Wade? I would have guessed very wrong. I would have said there's no way that Roe v. Wade gets overturned in my lifetime. I'm still alive, so we're still in my lifetime, and Roe v. Wade was overturned. Praise God for that one as well. Point being is that anything seems possible. Had you asked me a few years ago if it was possible to abolish the IRS, get rid of the income tax, I would have said no way. No, we'd have to. It'd take a 2-generation plan to make that happen. What about the Federal Reserve? I would say absolutely positively not. It's a private corporation, can't be done. Nothing we can do. We're stuck with them forever. We can fight it, but they have more control over the government than the voters or even the government itself. That's what I would have said. We've learned over the last month that we can dream. We can set goals that previously many of us, most of us, maybe all of us, would have thought were unrealistic. Suddenly, they're realistic. I don't know how realistic it is that we can completely abolish the IRS, but I think that it's definitely possible, as well as the income tax. I mean, we know that we're already in the process of trying to reduce it. Can it be eliminated? Can tariffs make up the difference? According to the most recent statistics, based upon just the notion of President Trump with his desires for equal tariffs across the board. In other words, whatever they charge us, we charge them. If that is implemented appropriately, universally, collected right, and all that good stuff, we're talking about, at least at this stage, about $700 billion in additional revenue for the federal government. But that doesn't take into account that if you were to also eliminate the income tax, you can't assume that prices could go up because of the tariffs, but so would spending. We would have more money. We could spend more, so there would be a need to import more, which means there would be more revenue generated as a result. It's funny, I'd never really considered tariffs to be a variation of like a consumption tax, but in many ways it is. The more we buy, the more tax in the form of tariffs are collected. That's a discussion for some of the day. What about the Federal Reserve? Is it truly immune? Does it truly own the citizens of the United States of America, as many of us have speculated over the years, over the decades? Maybe, maybe not. But again, we're talking about a new era. It's generally speaking, when candidates, especially presidential candidates, and even politicians, they don't have to be running for office. They can just come up with these grandiose ideas, these grand plans, and they always stick some crazy, cool, sort of awesome, but mostly cheesy name to it, such as the new golden era here in the United States of America. Well, it appears that such a dream is possible. As a matter of fact, I can't see it being stopped unless there's some sort of catastrophe. And of course, only if God wills for it to stop, or if he stops willing for it to continue, however you want to word it. Just imagine where we are compared to where many of us thought we were going to be. Even those of us, look, if you're going to sit out there and say, you know what, I knew that it was going to go down like this. I've been, I had this guy tell me, look, I've been following Trump since the escalator. I knew that it was going to be like this. And I asked him, I said, so then why wasn't it like this in the first term? Why was it so? And let's be transparent. Let's not be revisionist with our history, especially compared to what we're seeing today. The first term of President Trump was not fantastic. Was it better than Joe Biden? Was it better than Barack Obama? Was it better than George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or George H.W. Bush? Well, yeah, but talk about a low bar to set. Sure, it was better. We got tax cuts, but we still didn't repeal Obamacare. We didn't finish building the wall. We didn't do a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, there was some great stuff that happened during President Trump's first term. But there was a lot of bad stuff that happened as well. So if this person who's been following and rooting for President Trump since coming down the escalator, I ask, why did all of these great things that are happening today, why weren't they done that first term? And the answer, of course, is that we have a better President Trump today. And I would argue that better President Trump is clearly more redefined, better mandated, and perhaps more under the full will of God, because it's clear, to me at least, that President Trump is here for a reason. I think, as of today, it appears that reason is good, which is why, to me, there is no reason for us to not dream about, hope for, and even work towards getting rid of the IRS, getting rid of the Federal Reserve. There's a reason why the income tax and the Federal Reserve came about 112 years ago, almost at the exact same time. That reason is because they are intertwined. The income tax is not to pay for government action. That's not true. We always, my taxpayer dollars are paying that. My taxpayer dollars are paying that. That is inaccurate. That is not true. The Federal Reserve and the money that we borrow as a nation from the Federal Reserve pays for everything. All our tax dollars do is pay to service the debt to the Federal Reserve. That's it. Technically speaking, if we follow the money along the entire path, our taxpayer dollars pay interest, pay to service the debt. The debt that we continue to accumulate is what pays for stuff. This was designed to grow. It was designed to become too massive for us to be able to service it at some point. In other words, it was designed to be finite. It was designed to fail. And we are so close to that failure being realized, which is why when I say, hey, let's dream because, let's dream of getting rid of the IRS and the Federal Reserve and a whole bunch of other stuff, because it seems like we're in a good time for dreaming with President Trump out there and Elon Musk and all the other guys doing their thing, right? That's not the only reason. The only reason is because we don't really have a choice. We don't. The other option, the foul, devious option, the option that I would have said was almost a certainty just 2 or 3 months ago. I would have said we would have eventually be falling under the disgusting and cataclysmic scenario of fully embracing, because we've already partially embraced it, fully embracing modern monetary theory. That is the direction that we have been heading for a very long time. And it wasn't until President Trump came into office and started giving us hope. Now, I want to be very clear. Nothing that President Trump or Elon Musk or Tom Homan or Marco Rubio or Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem or any of them, nothing that they do can succeed unless it is the will of God for it to succeed. But conversely, nothing they do will fail if it is the will of God for it to not fail. Which is why I say, always, best thing we can do is to pray. Pray for our nation. Pray for clarity and discernment for our leaders. Pray that those who want to do us harm, whether us as a nation, us as individuals, us as a people, pray that their plans, their machinations, their actions are thwarted. We must continue to pray. And a lot of people, especially, obviously, if you're not a Bible-believing Christian, you see no benefit in that. But if you are a Bible-believing Christian, I would ask you to please put all of us as a nation in your prayers every day. Every prayer should include a mention of protection and discernment and wisdom for President Trump. Same thing for Elon Musk. Let them do God's will, not our will, not even their will. Have them pray. Pray that they will do God's will, because only then can this nation fully be saved. Now, I know a lot of you out there are already, you're fuming. You don't want to hear these words. You don't want to hear anything that I'm saying, which I'm surprised that you're still listening if you fall under that category. But know this, know and understand this, that we are in a time, a very unique time in American history. And when I say unique, I'm not using that word as in, there hasn't been much like it. I'm using it in the textbook definition of the word. By very unique, I mean it has never happened and likely will never happen again, where we as a nation have an opportunity without catastrophe to be fundamentally changed. We've seen the nation changed during catastrophe, obviously, during the Civil War, for example. We saw the nation change. Following 9/11, we saw the nation change. Following COVID, or during COVID, we saw the nation change fundamentally. But now we don't need a catastrophe or an event of any sort for fundamental change to happen, because the catalysts are already there. The people are in place. The confirmation yesterday of Kash Patel finalized, in my books, finalized the key pieces. There are other pieces. There are plenty of confirmations to go. But Kash Patel was the one that I thought, if we can just get him and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth and all the other controversial picks, if we could get them in, we should be okay. And we're doing better than okay. We have opportunities. Things are looking good. So we have to keep that going. That was a very long introduction to an article that this is one of Michael Snyder's, I would say, most important articles. Not necessarily his most astounding. He does write some pretty crazy things. Nor is it even his most intellectual. These are things that are relatively straightforward, but he words it in a way that is necessary. He alerts us, because we don't need to be taught this. We need to be reminded of the fact that this is the time when those big changes can be made. The article's titled, The Answer to 1913 is 2025. 3 charts that show why the income tax, the IRS, and the Federal Reserve should all be abolished. Apologies for that. What a horrible time for my phone to not be muted. It's funny, it wasn't muted in a previous segment, and I was in the middle of reading at the time, and so I couldn't get it turned down, and then, of course, my phone goes again. Apologies, very unprofessional. Why the income tax, the IRS, and the Federal Reserve should all be abolished. Most Americans don't know that for much of U.S. history, there was no federal income tax, and there was no central bank. But now everyone assumes that we must have a federal income tax and a central bank in order to have a functioning society. Today, there are just a handful of nations that do not have an income tax, and more than 99% of the entire population of the globe lives in a country that has a central bank. Of course, the two work hand in hand. A central bank creates a spiral of borrowing that is meant to be unbreakable, and an income tax is necessary to service payments on the debt spiral. It is not a coincidence that a federal income tax and the Federal Reserve were both established in 1913. Since that time, we have piled up the biggest mountain of debt in the history of the world, and that is precisely the outcome that the system was designed to produce. I'm going to link to this article in the show notes. I encourage you to read it. It does tell us, I would say, quite a bit about what our future could hold. But I return to the notion, the idea, the fact that we shouldn't limit our hopes and dreams for the nation. Not anymore. If it took you a day, a week, a month to come to that conclusion, ever since President Trump was inaugurated, so be it. But I would say that at this point, 99% of America-loving patriots who listen to the sound of my voice, 99% of you, should realize that impossible things have already taken place in recent years, and especially over the last month. Impossible things. Things that hadn't been done before, unprecedented, unique. And understanding that, it is our, I think, responsibility to dream big, to strive for even greater things, to support those who will help us to achieve those greater things, and above all else, to pray to God that it is His will that we can make these things happen. Because if there's ever a time in American history where we can abolish the Fed, abolish income tax, start generating our revenue through tariffs and other means, if there was ever a time, it is now. We haven't seen a time like this over the last 112 years. We may never see a time like this in the next 112 years. But today, in 2025, we have that opportunity, which means that we have that responsibility to do everything we can to make it happen. Anybody who's watched my show throughout the Biden-Harris regime, you're probably very well aware that I've been bullish about physical precious metals throughout. And I remain bullish, to be clear, even though obviously we're in a completely different and far better era under President Trump. I still remain bullish about gold and silver, and you can see in the spikes in prices recently of gold and silver that I have good reason to be. But here's the thing. When it came to cryptocurrencies under the Biden-Harris regime, I was very skeptical, always have been, because I just didn't trust them. I did not trust that a government that prides itself on authoritarianism would be able to handle a decentralized currency such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the like. Well, now we are in the Trump era, and all of a sudden I'm bullish. Bullish about crypto and the potential future there, especially as it pertains to one's retirement. Now, I think everybody and their dog is aware that they can back their retirement with physical precious metals such as gold and silver. I've been promoting that for a while. You can always go to jdrgold.com for that. But the addition, now that we are in 2025 and things seem to be very much on their way in the direction that we expected them to go economically under President Trump, all of a sudden, I am now bullish about protecting and potentially growing your retirement accounts through cryptocurrencies. These, like I said, it took me a while. I was skeptical because I thought, they're going to They're going to come out with a central bank digital currency. Well, Trump outlawed those. They're going to come out with de-dollarization and the BRICS. Well, Trump's taking care of that. All right, so what do we have left? Now we have an upside for cryptocurrencies. And I am very, very pleased to recommend going to jdrucker.com/crypto, jdrucker.com/crypto, and find out if a crypto-backed IRA is right for you.